Hello everyone, what's up? Welcome to the GMB channel. Hope you will enjoy our video. Before we begin, hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Here is the news title, Starmer's big moment. Can PM persuade Trump not to give in to Putin? When Keir Starmer is advised on how to handle his crucial meeting with Donald Trump at the White House on Thursday, he will be told by advisors from Downing Street and the Foreign Office to be very clear on his main points, and, above all, to be brief. Trump gets bored very easily, said one well-placed Whitehall source with knowledge of the president's attention span. When he loses interest and thinks someone is being boring, he just tunes out. He doesn't like the French president Emmanuel Macron, partly because Macron talks too much and tries to lecture him. Starmer will also be advised to flatter Trump when he can, to say that everyone is so grateful that he has focused the world's attention on the need for peace between Russia and Ukraine, but to flatter subtly, and not to lay it on too thick. 1. Unconfirmed story. Story from Theresa May's first visit to see Trump at the White House in 2017 is doing the rounds in Whitehall again, before the Starmer trip, and is being used as a cautionary tale for the current Prime Minister. When May first went to see Trump, she was told she had to congratulate him on lots of things, said one source. So she rushed over to him and congratulated him on his new cabinet appointments, saying, "You've appointed a great team, Donald." At which point he said, "Oh, thank you so much, Theresa. Who do you particularly like among them?" Which left her a bit stumped, so she just said, "Oh, well, all of them, Donald." The lesson being that too much flattery into trouble if you do not do your homework. Dealing with, and responding to, Trump in his self-appointed role as ultra-provocative would-be global peacemaker is requiring other leaders the world over to perform near-impossible balancing acts when framing their responses. Many of the U.S. president's statements on the Ukraine conflict, such as those suggesting that Ukraine was responsible for the Russian invasion and that its president, Volodymyr Zelensky, is a dictator, are regarded by European governments, including the British one, as patently ludicrous. Yet at the same time, no one can say so for fear of what the man who said those things will do next, and what revenge he might wreak in return. Peter Ricketts, former UK ambassador to Paris, said that Starmer should himself tune out from Trump's rhetoric. He should focus not on what Trump says, but what he does. He needs to get into Trump's mind that a rushed deal with Vladimir Putin over the heads of Ukraine-Europe is bound to be a deal that serves Putin's interests, and that Putin would be seen as strong and Trump weak. Another senior UK source agreed, saying that Starmer needed to convey to Trump that the only thing that would stop him earning his place in history would be by getting a great peace that was not seen as a fair deal. He needs to make Trump think that his success rests on not giving in to Putin, because if he does, he will himself seem weak, said the source. While cross-continental mudslinging has intensified, UK political leaders have had a painfully difficult few days trying to adapt to Trump's barrage of remarks, the latest of which was to say neither Starmer nor Macron, who will meet Trump at the White House on Monday, have done anything of note to sort out the war in Ukraine. Even Nigel Farage, who prides himself on his closeness to Trump and the Republicans, has had to equivocate and throw up a cloud of deliberate confusion around his own responses, so he can claim to be both distancing himself from the U.S. president and validating his interventions at the same time. Speaking to Sky News on Thursday about Trump's statement that Zelensky was a dictator, Farage said, "Take everything Trump says truthfully, but not literally." The Reform UK leader then tried to argue that Trump doesn't literally say Ukraine started the war, and was instead focused on bringing peace. When, however, it was put to Farage that Trump had told Zelensky, "You should have never started it, the conflict," Farage then replied, "Okay, he did. If you're happy." With UK public opinion overwhelmingly critical of Trump's comments on Zelensky and Ukraine, today's opinion poll for The Observer shows the Trump administration has a 40% approval rating on Ukraine compared with 2% for the previous Biden administration. The Tory leader, Kemi Badenoch, also felt the need to part company with Trump, tweeting on X that President Zelensky is not a dictator, though she backed him over the need for European nations. About 61% to increase defense of Tory voters disagree with the Trump administration on Ukraine, so for Badenoch not to express some reservations over the US president could have left her in big trouble in her own party. The Liberal Democrats, meanwhile, looking for more seats and votes behind the blue wall, have spotted an opportunity as the anti-Trump party. Callum Miller, their foreign affairs spokesman, said the Lib Dems had a duty to stand up for people in his constituency and others who flew Ukrainian flags in their villages and had taken in Ukrainian refugees. It is our role to be their voice. In Parliament, he said, to say that Trump is a narcissist who is not to be trusted. Government sources suggested on Saturday night that Starmer would probably try to speak to Macron on Sunday before the French president flies to Washington, so as to agree the broad outlines of a European position. But another senior source said, the last thing Starmer should do when he meets Trump is try to speak for the Europeans or represent a European position. Trump has made clear what he thinks of European leaders last week. Starmer needs to be his own man, to say the UK was the first country to offer to send troops to Ukraine and do its bit. If he does that, and succeeds in persuading Trump that it will look terrible to the world if he allows Putin just to get everything he wants, it could be a big news. John Lydon. Trump is the Sex Pistols of politics. The former Sex Pistol blasts the BBC, Keir Starmer, and his ex-bandmates, and praises Trump and working-class values ahead of Public Image Ltd's new UK tour. That familiar face veers into view on Zoom. It lives. John Lydon cackles over his breakfast pint before unleashing a cascade of caustic opinions certain to unsettle BAFTA bigwigs. For starters, he's enjoying Trump's presidency. It's joyous, John says, grinning broadly. His distractors are distraught. But public money had been wasted, and now there's a businessman in charge. He stops the waste, cleans up the rubbish, and makes it efficient. What a novel idea. I'm sorry, folks, but he is the Sex Pistols of politics. I like that he'll do what he says. He doesn't make banal promises. It's not politics as usual. That's why the BBC hate it. They, and those like them, are who caused this to happen. The BBC famously banned Lydon in 1978 after he made unbroadcast comments about Jimmy Savile that turned out to be true. I was the first, then Status Quo said it, and for that we got banned, he says, translating BBC as biased, bourgeois, and we'll skip the C. What a topsy-turvy place Britain has become under that odd man, Keir Starmer. He was running the CPS when they didn't prosecute Savile, lest we forget. John beams broadly. I'm still making friends and influencing people. Lydon, 69, is still revered as Johnny Rotten, the iconic face of punk rock, even though he left the Sex Pistols to form Public Image Ltd 43 years ago. John hit a rough patch. In 2023, losing both Nora, his smart, beautiful German wife of 44 years, and his lifelong friend and manager John Rambo Stevens. I've done moping and feeling sorry for myself, he tells me. I thought for a while that I might just retire, that nobody was interested in what I was doing. It was a self-taught lie. We can't just rest easy. John's new manager is Alan McGee, of Oasis fame. He's relentless. He's enthralling. He's brought in many people. We've changed promoters. I'm writing songs now without having to think about it. So much so that he tells me he fell asleep while writing the night before. I gave myself a nosebleed, he says. I woke up to find a pencil up my nose, spurting blood all over the gaff. Lydon will tour the UK and Ireland for 4 solid months with PL, followed by his own one-man show. The Titanic sails, but this time it gets there, he laughs. Nora was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2018. John was her carer. Now he meets and greets his audience before his one-man show, so people can tell him their stories, which he incorporates on stage. It's an old English vibe, finding something in common, and no doubt helping people who have to deal with Alzheimer's. John lost his 2021 legal battle to stop his former bandmates using Sex Pistols music in the Disney Plus series Pistol. I'm outnumbered, he says, his voice hardening. I was in a court case, in the middle of my wife dying, with the Sex Pistols represented by the Disney Corporation. The Sex Pistols, now owned by Mickey Mouse. He dismisses the band, who have been gigging with Frank Turner on vocals, as karaoke. They'd be a great act on a cruise ship. They haven't written any new songs since I left. I just said, don't use my words, because it's clear you don't understand them. Netflix series. The Crown started their fallout. Netflix wanted to have anarchy in the UK and God Save the Queen playing over riot scenes at the Jubilee. But that did not happen. There were no riots. I said no, which drove the others nuts. They're denying their own history. The only people who stood up at the Jubilee were the Sex Pistols. That was real, not this banal fantasy. In the court case, they stated that The Crown was Steve Jones's favorite TV show. What? I was laughing. What next, punk gardening with Steve Jones pushing up daisies? It's the Kiss approach. Cash is everything. It's detrimental to the songs. Their manager isn't British. Lydon's strong sense of right and wrong are products of his upbringing. The values I grew up with, not morals. Morals are religious. We have values. You didn't steal from your own. You looked out for one and another. Chippy and forthright, John Joseph Lydon was the eldest of 4 brothers born in Finsbury Park, North London, to Irish immigrants John and Mary. He grew up in a 2-bedroom flat in Benwell Road, right by Arsenal's Highbury Stadium, all sharing 2 rooms with no indoor toilet. You had to be funny to survive. But most people in our area were in similar situations, so it didn't feel like we were neglected until Colour Telly arrived. We saw adverts for Axminster carpets and wallpaper. Wow, that's novel. It was a very mixed area. We didn't need labor to tell us to be home games enthralled him. His crane driver father took him to see his first match when he was 4. I'm still a season ticket holder. My family use it. The new stadium is right on top of the squalor I grew up in. Footballs, gentrification does not impress him, nor does modern comedy. I don't find left-wing comedians very funny, trying to lecture me. Middle-class students, always a problem. They're educated but have no originality. They see us as beneath them. Woke, he says, is another word for judgmental. John's comedy heroes are Tommy Cooper and Norman Wisdom. A flyweight boxer with a heart, spectacular. I love that tatty image. Kenneth Williams and the Carry On Crew. Infamy. Infamy. They've all got it in for me. The audacity. I spent many an hour with Nora watching Steptoe and Son. She learnt English better watching that than any other way. The subtleties, the subterfuge, the innuendo. John left England for California 41 years ago, partly for health reasons. At 7, meningitis left him in a coma, wiping his memory, and tormenting him with hallucinogenic visions, which still sometimes return. Dismissed as dummy dum-dum by nuns at his Catholic school, he self-educated, reading voraciously, and developed lifelong loves of painting and music. Lydon was fascinated by youth culture. Watching. The gangs changed from Ted to mods to skinheads in the space of a few years. He had his own look, dyed green hair, safety pins, and a homemade I Hate Pink Floyd t-shirt before he even met punk Svengali Malcolm McLaren. The Pistols' incendiary anthems traumatized polite society and kick-started a worldwide phenomenon. People try and say punk owes a lot to America. It owes nothing at all to America. Everything I wrote was about my immediate surroundings. How was God Save the Queen influenced by the Ramones? The Ramones were fine, but they were a long-haired pop band with nothing meaningful to say. The famously scabrous Rotten was a shy teen who adopted arrogance as a survival tool. In 1977, he asked Motorhead's Lemmy to teach his doomed pal, John Sid Vicious, Richie the bass. It's an instrument anyone can learn. Not Sid. Lemmy rang me up and said, John, he's got no talent at all. He's tone-deaf, and he can't follow a tune. Lydon quit after the Pistols' shambolic U.S. tour in January 1978. By May, he was rehearsing PIL, whose hits include Public, Image, Rise, This Is Not a Love Song, and Death Disco, written for his dying mother. They will finish writing their next album, their 12th, on the UK tour bus. Much better than arguing about the chocolate biscuits. Growing up, John loved music. Reggae, some classical, Hawkwind. I held status quo in high regard. The Pink Fairies, too. He relaxes by blasting out music at full volume. I like my record player to sound like a PA. There wasn't a band in the 70s that I missed. I remember hopping the train at 13 to see Free at the Isle of Wight. I was furious with the middle-class hippie audience for not loving what they were hearing. He still gets asked to work with other musicians but says, "I don't feel it. I get offered a lot of money, but I'm not a session singer." I'm not a singer at all, except in the fine tradition of the sewing machine. I don't want a part of the system. I don't like people who take themselves too seriously. So what do you guys think about this update? Let me know in the comment below. If you like my video, please press like button and subscribe for more. Hope I'll see you in next video.